guys. I'm Esme Williams. This is Grace Prayapong-Pizan, and we're from Allrecipes. And thanks to you who are wearing orange in the crowd. That's our favorite color. So thank you for that. And we're totally psyched to be here today. I've heard that there's more than 5,000 people in town for this conference, which is a lot of data junkies. And it kind of explains why the line at Starbucks was so long this morning. So that's a good thing. And we're going to just spend the next hour or so just talking about how Allrecipes is leveraging data to drive our growth, but also the growth of so many of the partners that we work with. And we'll tell you more about kind of what we mean when we say that. And we're a pretty low-key, casual brand and group of people. So if you have any questions at any time during the presentation, just fire the hand up and we'll call on you. We'd like this to be a conversation. We want to be sure that we're having you leave here today with some takeaways that are valuable to you. So just let us know. I'm going to just open it up by giving a little bit of an overview on who exactly is Allrecipes. And then we're going to pass it along to Grace. Grace leads our BI team, and she's really the expert when it comes to Tableau. And then we're going to wrap up with a case study on how our advertising and marketing teams are leveraging Tableau and the BI team to help drive success for our partners. Okay, so let's see how to work this. There we go. All right, so who is Allrecipes? We are the #1 digital food brand. We launched here in Seattle 18 years ago. Pretty cool. It was a group of University of Washington graduates who thought that the web could be a pretty cool place for people to share their food experiences. So they launched cookierecipe.com, held their breath, and lo and behold, there was a lot of cookie lovers on the web. And so over the last 18 years, we have amassed a tremendous amount of recipes, reviews, photos, etc., that all help people meet their everyday food needs. And we've grown from a tiny startup to having over 35 million unique visitors per month. So we have really sizable traffic. And this traffic amount puts us in the top 10 social media sites. So not quite as large as Facebook and YouTube, but we are in the top 10, which is pretty exciting. A lot of folks don't necessarily think of us that way. But our community has shared millions and millions of pieces of information that are collected, organized, and shared on a daily basis. Allrecipes.com is our flagship property, also known as m.allrecipes.com for those accessing on mobile devices. But we're actually a global company. So starting in 2008, we realized that 20% of our audience was coming from outside of the US. So we started to introduce some communities in markets around the world. And so today we have 19 sites serving 24 countries and 13 languages. And in markets such as Australia, the UK, Mexico, Netherlands, Canada, we're a top site, and most other markets we're a top 10 site. So we're collecting data not only for the food behaviors in the US, but also around the world. Allrecipes has really strong reach and scale. So presently about 1 in 10 home cooks who access content, food-focused content online are coming to an Allrecipes experience through one of their devices. This is about twice the size of the #2 global brand, which is the Food Network. So we're seeing a lot of success with this strategy, which is great. And we play out across screens. As you can imagine, having the ability to access food and recipe ideas while you're on the go is of a tremendous value to home cooks. And so we're presently, phones are the top device that people are using to access the brand, followed by PC and tablet, all seeing really strong growth. And what's so great about mobile devices is that now people can figure out what to make for dinner while they're on the go, right? Most people have no idea what they're going to make for dinner at 4 o'clock each night. And odds are that you're probably commuting home, you're on the bus, you're in the store, and we can kind of help you figure out what to make with that. You know, chicken legs that are on sale, which is a tremendous value. Visits are our fastest growing metric, which is pretty cool. So the average Allrecipes home cook is coming in about 3 times per month. Oftentimes on a Sunday, they're using the recipes on the site and the grocery savings to help inform, what they're going to purchase for the week ahead to make meals. And as you can imagine, when you have this many people accessing this many times, we have a tremendous amount of data that we're collecting. Last year, we saw over 1 billion visits to the site, billions of recipes reviewed. In a typical month, we have about 1.5 million unique search terms. And I'm told the number is higher than this. It's just that Omniture maxes out at 1.5 million. So everybody's looking for something different. And oftentimes they'll describe the exact same thing with different words. So it's good for us to have access to see what people are seeking, just because, again, all of our growth is organic, so we really have to have a good pulse on what type of content that people are seeking. We also know that 9 out of 10 home cooks are looking at Allrecipes before they go to the store. They will be oftentimes trying to figure out what they need before they go to the store. So this is a great opportunity for a lot of the biggest food companies in the world to figure out, what is it that people are making, and how does my product fit into their daily interests, needs, and behaviors. And so this is the type of data that Grace and her team have the privilege of sorting through on a daily basis. And this is just taking a look at search behaviors worldwide. As you can see, every country that we have access to is a little bit different, but on a very positive note, pizza is very popular everywhere, so if you have travel plans, rest assured you will not starve.
Okay, so on the BI perspective, I'm going to talk a little bit about how we grew the business intelligence team at Allrecipes. Even though we're a big site and we have a very large audience, we are a relatively small organization with very few resources. So we took a small team and grew it to really service the entire organization. So I'm going to be speaking about how we evolved that team in an environment where you might be resource constrained, where it's hard to justify adding more headcount, and an environment where you're really passionate about the data and trying to convince other people that they should be as well. So current state at Allrecipes and Business Intelligence is that we really are a standalone organization at Allrecipes. We don't report up through IT or marketing or ad sales. We stand alone, and we service all of the different groups at Allrecipes and some of the groups at our parent company, Meredith. Our vision to service these different groups is to really enlighten and empower with immediacy and scale. That's kind of our current state. And where we'd like to go is to get in front of some of the trends that my team is able to recognize and acknowledge, and get that in front of the organization before it happens. So right now we're really good at talking about current state, what's happening on the site right now, what's happening in the industry, but how do we get in front of that in a more proactive, predictive way. So this vision is really all about where we are now and where we want to go. So this is just the circles around BI are just some of the teams that we work with on a day-to-day basis, and what does it mean to really service these different teams. My team will work, for example, with the product team to help understand what's happening on the site now, establishing benchmarks, and acting as a partner with the product team to understand what is the data that we need to collect in order to achieve this more future looking vision around being more predictive, being more in front of the trends. So we work pretty actively with product to help understand what's coming, how we want to capture data around those new site features, and how we want to report and surface some of that intelligence and insight around what's happening. We work with our technology team, for example, on things like page load time. So as part of our testing discipline, we wanted to look at a variety of metrics that would influence how the results of a test were being measured. And so with our technology team, we included things like page load time as part of a metric in evaluating an A/B test, because if page load time increased substantially, you might see the results of your test skewed because you've got people all of a sudden who are very patient and very motivated and will wait for that long loading page to load, and so they might be more likely to interact if they're willing to sit on that page for a much longer time. So that's an example of how we worked with our technology team. From a business development standpoint, we work with that particular team to help understand how product and different business development initiatives might impact user engagement. So if we want to add yet another ad placement on a recipe page, how is that going to influence or positively or negatively impact revenue, or positively or negatively impact user experience? So we work very closely with that particular team. In doing all this, like I said, we're a pretty small team at BI. Right now we're 10 people. We didn't start out with 10 people, but we really wanted to put a framework and a process around how we service all these different teams, because I'm sure, as many of you know, they're in similar groups or roles. There's always more requests than you could ever hope to fulfill. So we recognize that there's this huge opportunity to get people interested in the work that we do, but we couldn't, once we created this demand, keep up with it. So we put some pretty rigorous measures in place to first collect all of the questions that people were hoping to have answered. So we wanted to get all of that information that people were looking for and then quantify it, because one of the things that in my role I'm interested in is really measuring how I need to scale my team based on the demand and the kinds of things people are looking for and the time, from a time perspective, the demands of the team. So we have a system in place to collect questions that people want answered. We meet twice a week to schedule those requests, and we have this constant communication with the folks that are submitting the requests to basically say, we acknowledge that this request is here. We may not be able to address it now, but that has been really, really important in establishing this this system of being able to understand what the organization needs and not lose that data and not lose the confidence of the other folks in the organization as BI as a resource, even though we're not able to fulfill everything that we are asked to do. So how have we arrived at this place that we are now? Well, down at the bottom of this arrow, we have executive metrics. And before I started at Allrecipes in the business intelligence group, there were 4 people in BI. And really their sole task was to surface executive metrics. So our Adobe Site Catalyst implementation was brand new. It was just implemented. The director at the time understood that this was a really powerful source of information. So they established this little BI group to help surface some of these metrics at the executive level. So it was really out-of-the-box analytics. It was page views, visits, uniques, year-over-year growth, what percentage of traffic is coming from search engines versus, direct traffic. So it was very, very basic metrics. Also part of that was sales systems, so looking at revenue and pipeline. So that was all housed in BI. And the idea is that BI was meant to be an agnostic group that wasn't only about financial reporting or only about sales reporting. It was really meant to kind of be this place that everyone could go. But with 4 people, the capabilities were fairly limited. So I was brought on to establish more of a data discipline. So at the time that the analytics implementation was done, it was pretty much done by Adobe. They had consultants in, and they actually did a really great job. A very robust, rich, informative implementation, but it wasn't baked into the organization. So once it was implemented, no one ever looked at the implementation again. New pages were added to the site, new features were implemented, and nobody thought, well, how do we instrument tracking so that we can continue to enhance our analytics? So I was brought on to kind of come in, understand what we were collecting, and really make something out of this significant investment for a small company like Allrecipes. So I basically had to invite myself to every meeting I could to talk to our product team and our development teams, to talk about the importance of getting this tracking in place, getting into the tracking and understanding what was broken, what was wrong, and really advocating to get it fixed. And through this, I started to surface metrics. And really sticky metrics, because a lot of people were kind of used to the executive metrics. They're like, yeah, I know how many visits, visitors, uniques we get. But what I wanted to surface were some of those things that were a little bit harder to get at, like, do you know that mobile traffic, yeah, is X% of our visits, but it is tripling every month. Year over year, we're seeing triple-digit growth. And so surfacing kind of more the interpretation or the scale of what these things meant went into kind of establishing this data discipline. And then, as I mentioned, we wanted to collect the questions. So it was one thing when I thought a metric was interesting and something that I thought I should evangelize across the organization. It was a whole nother level to ask people what they wanted to know. And so that was one of, I think, the first ways that we were really to grow this data-driven culture at Allrecipes is me and the one other person I worked with started, instead of producing these executive metrics, went out and asked people, what is it that you're having trouble with in your day-to-day job? How can this data possibly help? And so when we started to do that, really addressing other people's questions outside of BI, we started to really foster this environment where people wanted more and more. And so we started setting up some of these mechanisms for getting people to submit requests. And it was a huge priority for me not to make it cumbersome to submit requests. So I pretty much, and even today, we ask for 3 things when somebody wants BI to do some research or digging into a particular problem. We ask them, what is the business question you're trying to answer? How are you going to use this information? And ideally, when would you like to receive this information? So we just ask them those 3 simple things, and we have been able to collect so much around what people are interested in. And while we are very familiar with the data in BI and think of all kinds of really interesting things to dig into, the questions that come from outside of BI are so much richer and have really helped us build better understanding around the data that we collect. So that was really about kind of surfacing enlightenment. Now we're more into this empowerment stage, so really using this data. Now that it's clean, we have good process for collecting data. There is never a site feature that launches or a product that launches that doesn't have a certain amount of analytics. We wanted to be able to make richer decisions, better decisions. And so we took this philosophy that any data that we were collecting there had to be some mechanism to connect it to other data, that a silo or standalone data source is really meaningless, particularly as we think about moving into this big data age. So we really started to think, how do we connect up our analytics data to this internal data source that we have? So we have a pretty rich internal database that has all of our content, our member data around the things that people are saving, the kinds of content that they're submitting. We have a very robust content taxonomy that classifies all of our content. And so we wanted to be able to connect this to the analytics to be able to then show even more trends across these 2 disparate data sources. And so now we have a very connected environment with many, many connections between our data sources, and I'll show the different data sources we have in a couple more slides. So at this empowerment stage, I mean, we really were very successful in getting people to ask questions. People wanted someone from BI to partner in a lot of the decisions when they were launching a new feature or thinking about a new feature. Getting someone in BI involved to vet the model or to help prioritize, should we do this feature or this feature? Which one has the biggest potential for, increasing page views per visit? We grew the team from 4 to 9, and then we started feeling very bogged down. Everything was taking 2 to 3 weeks to get out the door because we were really, I have really great analysts, and they really want to dig and come up with the right answers and very rich sets of answers, but it wasn't scalable. We were only servicing, maybe 1 or 2 groups at a time because we only had a couple of analysts, and the questions were getting harder and harder to answer. And so what we needed to figure out is, how can we address the questions of one person but scale it across multiple units or multiple teams? And so we hired more engineers. We went from 1 engineer to 2 and entered more this immediacy and scale part of our vision. We hired a developer to work on a data warehouse. So we had all of this data, and we were really doing a lot of joining data in Excel, which was becoming impossible. So we brought data into a data warehouse. We started importing all of our raw analytics data into this warehouse and figuring out how to connect it. And this is also where Tableau comes into the picture. Prior to Tableau, all of our deliverables were really Excel. not repeatable, definitely not scalable. And so Tableau has really helped us build out this sense of immediacy and scale, particularly given that at this point, we've got 4 or 5 analysts and still only 2 engineers. So that's where we are today. We're kind of straddling this area of immediacy and scale and getting in front of trends, and I'll talk a little bit about how we're being more proactive about getting in front of trends and getting that data out to our stakeholders. So the team that I have now, the 10-person team, is organized in kind of these 3 layers, and there's a lot of overlap between the layers. So at the top, we have an insights layer. In the middle, we have reporting and analytics. And at the base, our foundation is engineering. So the engineering team works on bringing the raw analytics data into a data warehouse. So they're doing a lot of transformations on that data because we understand that analytics platforms change quite a bit, and where that data is coming from, we want it to be fluid and flexible. So we try and design ways of making sure that if we had to turn off Adobe today and bring Google Analytics on, that our reporting and our insights environments wouldn't be negatively impacted, or that we wouldn't be substantially disrupted. So we transform the data, bring it into a data warehouse. Our engineering team, we've actually added a new role, and that's an analytics engineer. So someone that is solely responsible for overseeing and working with the dev team, and in some cases doing the analytics implementation themselves. Because it is so important that you understand the analytics tools. And prior to this, our development team, the teams that are writing the site code, developing for the site, were the ones instrumenting the tracking, and they often didn't know the ins and outs of the analytics platform. So we added that role. Engineering also helps with our data aggregation. So we bring in ad server data, which is billions and billions of records, and so that is not really sustainable for our environment. So we do some pre-aggregation of some of the data, all handled by our engineering team. Reporting and analytics, so we have a lot of recurring reporting, monthly, weekly, daily reporting. We handle that. I mean, the analysts and the developers are both building this kind of reporting, but this is stuff that we send out on a recurring, regular basis. We leverage Tableau Server right now to handle the reporting and analytics layer. But really, I think what sets us apart is this insights discipline. So we were finding that revenue was trumping everything, and so all of our requests that we were prioritizing higher than all others were around advertising revenue, and that was not necessarily a model we wanted to sustain. It wasn't in the spirit of how we originally started. So we split the team, or at least the insights parts of the team, into 2 areas of focus, so advertiser insights and audience insights. This also helped us manage the data sources that we were collecting. It's really challenging to be expert in all the platforms and all the tools out there. DFP is a challenging tool to understand, or a platform to understand. And our internal databases, our member databases, are extremely complex to understand. And so it made sense to kind of split it in these 2 disciplines where people could really become experts in the advertiser relating tools and the audience related tools. So our tech stack. Tableau sits at the top. It's really our primary presentation layer, but we're still doing quite a bit in Excel as we transition things to Tableau. We use SSRS in some rare cases, and we build a lot of dashboards in our analytics tool because we give everyone in the organization an analytics login, so that's a really good place to quickly surface dashboards. In between the data systems, we use S3 for a lot of raw data storage. Redshift is our data warehouse. SQL Server houses a lot of our aggregations. We also have Salesforce, our CRM. And down at the base, we have all of our different data sources. So we bring in data from analytics, Site Catalyst, from Facebook's Insights API, Pinterest API, our order management system, and some SEO-related tools. I think I've got someone in my team that can correct me if I'm wrong, but we, I think, bring into our environments about billion records, more than 1 billion records every month across analytics and pre-aggregated ad server DFP data. So for us, that feels like a lot. I'm sure people could raise their hand in this room and say, we beat you. There's a lot more that we're collecting. Also, I talked a little bit about our classification schema. So our internal databases have as many, I think we have like 2,500 different attributes that we classify our content against. All of our member data, what people are saving, the types of recipes they're reviewing, how they're reviewing them. So very rich data set that we're working with at Allrecipes. So I'm going to go through some examples of how we've applied Tableau and how we're using Tableau to help answer some business questions. And then Esme's got a really amazing case study for a particular brand that I think is a really good thing to look at right before lunch, because I don't have any recipes to share. I don't think we have any recipes in this deck, but there are a lot of really good food photos in the case study. So the first example I'll go through is some reporting that we look at every week that helps us monitor our competitive set. So allrecipes.com is the number one website in the food space, and we're very proud of that. Totally organic. We're 16 years old, and as far as I know, we've never paid for traffic. That our growth has been completely organic because we've been really successful in SEO. So we're very sensitive about maintaining that number one position. And this space has grown so much. There's so much competition in the food space. And so I don't know if we have any of our competitors in the room, but so you're getting our secrets here. So we wanted to be able to identify all the new players coming into the market, as well as, where are our closest competitors relative to us. And so we use a data source called Hitwise that gives us industry rankings every month. So what we wanted to do was create a tool or a visualization that would help us quickly be able to see what's happening in our space. So this visualization at the top here shows the top 5 sites in our industry. The colors are the different sites, and the arrows show week over week change. So what we started to see here is that, okay, number one is Allrecipes, few orange at the top is good. But what we started to see is that in the top 4 sites, there really wasn't a lot of volatility, that it's really 4 sites that dominate this particular industry. But number 5 has a lot of variability. There are a lot of people that come in and out of the 5th place ranking, and this is all based on number of visits. From Hitwise. Yeah. Hitwise, right now, it's US only, and I don't think at this point it included mobile. They just recently launched mobile data as part of their offering. But this was just a directional way for us to know where are we ranking. We use ComScore data as kind of the definitive source for where we rank, but Hitwise gives you weekly data, so we're able to kind of see ahead of the ComScore numbers coming out where we are. Food Network last Thanksgiving overtook us because they paid for some traffic, which, is fine. I wish we had budgets to do that, but we don't. And so we were kind of able to monitor what was going to happen at Thanksgiving, prepare our sales team ahead of time, because a lot of our advertisers, it's important that we're number one. And so our sales team we can give them a bit of a heads up so that they can prepare themselves to talk to some of the advertisers ahead of the ComScore data coming out.
Are you guys measuring where you're getting blended search results that are more of the image, recipe rating, and CTR from those types of organic results versus just straight up text results?
Oh, you mean paid text placements?
I mean like an organic result that is a universal search result that has the image, the recipe rating.
Oh, with the micro formatting.
Yeah.
We aren't able to tell how much of our traffic comes directly from our ranking with those signals, but I'll tell you, Google at one point had some kind of issue where our images, our rich snippets went away, the images and the ratings, and we did definitely see the amount of traffic, and where the data that we have to monitor our ranking definitely dipped. So it's huge for us to have that photo and that image in that result. Yep.
I don't use it.
I know, neither do I.
Well, you guys are my number one.
Oh, yay, okay. All right, so that's how we monitor the competitive set. We also built a prototype to help us figure out content gaps and how to prioritize the recipes that we publish. So we get thousands and thousands of recipe submissions a day, and people ask me if we test the recipes in the office. Sometimes we do, but for the most part, I hate to dispel the myth, or, I think everybody thinks we're cooking all the time, and I wish we were, but we're not. We do have editors who are trained professionals that understand how to read a recipe and if that recipe is actually going to produce something remotely edible. So they have a lot on their plates, right? So they're looking at all of these recipes being submitted. They have to make decisions around, what they want to publish, right? Because they are foodies, they love food, they love cooking, they have particular interests that they want to surface on the site. But we did have this notion of trying to be data-driven. So what we wanted to do was give them a tool to help them understand what are people searching for and where do we have content gaps. So we built this prototype that surfaces volume of searches for particular internal search terms. I wish we could have used Google, but we're not getting that data anymore in analytics. So we use our internal search, and then we have an internal API that can hit our database of recipes to tell us how many recipes would be returned for that particular search. So we wanted to couple search volume with the number of recipes being returned to help our editors make decisions about what recipes to publish and when. So the top left chart shows recipes returned and number of source searches for individual keywords. And so what I've done here is just selected. So this is an interactive tool. I've selected recipes or keywords that had what I thought were low number of recipes returned. So across all of our keywords, the median number of results was like 200. So I think returning only 100 recipes is below par. We don't want to do that. We want to return at least 200 recipes. So I selected things with more than 100 searches and 100,000 searches and fewer than 100 recipes returned for the month of December, which is one of our biggest months. And then down below, basically this is a percentile of all of the searches. So the percentile, the table calculation, I think it's down and then across, or no, I think it's just down, so that you can see when this particular search term has the highest interest. So apple crescents, you can see, had no interest, or there was nobody searching for apple crescents February through October, and I have November cut off here, but apple pie crescents all of a sudden in November, December, and January just went through the roof. And I think we only had 6 recipes returned. So that was a huge opportunity for our editorial team to then find these apple crescent recipes that have been submitted and publish those recipes. So the gradient here is based on interest. So the deeper the orange, the higher the interest. And so this tool, it's a prototype. We haven't quite released it yet because we're still trying to work out some of the kinks. Will help and can help them figure out when to publish these recipes and help them plan their editorial schedule.
Is this data from Omniture?
The internal search data is from Omniture. Yes, yep, we parse it. Yep. And then it's an internal API that finds out how many recipes are returned for that exact keyword. Okay, and then more recently we've had an initiative that we've called Hot Sheets. So our ad sales team really uses data as part of the RFP process. They want to surface food trends to some of the food interested advertisers. And we were getting very common requests. So again, this repository of requests that we've managed for years and years now was a really great source for us to understand patterns and what people were looking for. So what we wanted to do was use the fact that Tableau can create these very beautiful visualizations, because I don't have designers on my team, but we wanted to be able to package these insights that we were regularly getting from our sales team every year. It was kind of the same thing. We were putting the data together for them, but it was always a little bit different, and it was really bogging us down during very busy parts of the year. So we wanted to put together what we're calling hot sheets to help get in front of these requests, templatize it so we could figure out how to very quickly produce these things, and then work with other folks in the organization to help us make this very valuable package that would be good for the sales team, but good for our editors, for our newsletter editors, as well as for PR and media opportunities. And so we worked with the sales team to figure out what kinds of metrics people were interested in understanding. We get a lot of requests like, what are the most popular cocktail and drink recipes? What are the most popular Thanksgiving side dishes? So we wanted to package all these very common things into something that we could immediately send out when we got a request in, so we could then move on to the next harder question that we hadn't answered. So these hot sheets are, I think they're 4-page documents. We distribute them as PDFs, but they are created through Tableau. The idea is that at some point we'll get them hooked up to our live data feed and have them showing real-time trends, but our traffic tends to be so seasonal that real-time isn't always relevant for us. So this particular example is for cocktails and drinks. Very popular, you can see in December when people are celebrating and when people are outside barbecuing. So we packaged up kind of trends around when this particular content type spikes. The monthly popularity shows both year-over-year growth on the gradient. So if it's blue, it did not grow year-over-year. If it's on the orange end of the spectrum, then we've seen year-over-year growth. The gray line in this monthly popularity is how our typical traffic patterns are throughout a year. So you can see here that even though May, June, July tend to be kind of our lower season for cocktail and drinks with alcohol, it's a pretty popular time of the year for this content. We do hour of day, so as a percentage of traffic to the site, what percentage of traffic is going to these drinks. So some really interesting trends here. We don't really see a lot of this particular trend where it's like into very late at night and in the very wee hours of the morning, people are, as a proportion of all traffic, looking at cocktails. And then nothing surprising about day of week, so it's, weekenders looking for cocktails. But what's kind of interesting is the geographic indexing of cocktail drinks. So New York, D.C., high-stress folks needing a cocktail right away. All right. And then we have top recipes. So again, like I said, we get a lot of people very interested in what are the most popular content types or the recipes that people are looking for particular topics. So most search for recipes, vodka, sangria, those are the things people are searching for. Really interesting that it's kind of ingredient based. So what do I have in my bar that I can make something out of? We still support print on our site, so we use print as one signal that somebody's actually going to make this recipe. So these are the recipes that are commonly printed. Jell-O shots. Well, sliced watermelon Jell-O shots, yeah. Because they're very beautiful. If you go to the site, they are really, really cool looking. Yeah, you seen them? Yeah. Oh, you've made them, okay. Oh, excellent. Yeah, so you're in that pool right there. So mobile recipes, so which recipes have higher volumes of traffic on our mobile site, and then most photogenic are the recipes that inspire the most photos. And then we also include a glossary in this deliverable. So we've tried to make some of the metrics a little bit more friendly sounding, but we were still getting a lot of people asking, what is this? What does this mean? So the hot sheets have been really popular and very time-saving for us because we've got the system down and we're able to produce these relatively quickly. So that's how BI has been using Tableau for our internal stakeholders, some of our external stakeholders. Esme is going to go through a really great case study about how we worked with an advertiser to really very closely be a consultant to this advertiser to help them have a very successful campaign.
How did you share this data that just showed?
Well, we put them in PDFs, and so we have a slide share platform that we use at the company, so we publish them to the slide share.
You put them in the server?
Yes.
Give access?
Yes, right now they're PDFs because not everybody has Tableau access right now, so we publish them as PDFs and then put them in a repository that everybody does have access to. Yeah.
Nobody asked you for Excel?
Not yet, but you know what they want? They want PDFs, or I'm sorry, they want PowerPoint. They want us to like parse this stuff up and put it into a PowerPoint for them. And we're like, no, that's not the point.
All right, so we've got about 15 minutes left, and I'll probably go through this pretty quickly. So if I go through something too quickly, feel free to come by afterwards, and I can give you a copy of the slides or walk you through stuff. But as Grace mentioned, we work with most of the largest food companies, Kraft, General Mills, Unilever, Kellogg's. I mean, if it's something that you find in the grocery store, odds are we have a relationship with them, and they look to us to help inform their marketing strategies, because really, for them to be successful in today's kind of world, their message has to be relevant and authentic, right? So the best stories aren't necessarily those told by brands, it's those told by those brand advocates. And also, they have a tremendous need to share the right message at the right time to the right audience. And so at Allrecipes, we've got this window into American kitchens, and so they are increasingly looking to us ahead of time to help sort of inform their campaign strategies. So this particular story is about chocolate and about GHIRARDELLI. Last year, they came to us wanting to look for insights to help inform their holiday campaign. That's when most baking brands come onto the site, right? Because so many people bake for Thanksgiving and Christmas. And so we came up with a three-pronged strategy of kind of how to approach helping them understand the best strategies. One, we took a look at last year's campaign behaviors, because there's a lot of information there in terms of perhaps what to do again and perhaps what to not do again. We also wanted to look at platform adoption, because we knew that a lot of times we design for a use case, and different devices allow us to connect with consumers at different parts of their cooking journey, whether they're planning, shopping, cooking, or sharing. And then we also just wanted to see what were trends in chocolate, because they wanted a campaign that was really vocal and viral. And those things that are new and exciting and different tend to sort of carry the broadest reach in terms of what people are talking about, right? Buzz. So they wanted to create buzz, but make sure that GHIRARDELLI was kind of part of that hero. So GHIRARDELLI, based in San Francisco, premium chocolate maker. If you haven't tried their products, they're really pretty outstanding and make for a great chocolate chip cookie and other stuff. And we've got lots of recipes on our site if you'd like to make lots of chocolate stuff. So their goal was to get mainstream consumers to trade up to premium baking chocolate. So as you cruise through that baking aisle, there's a few different choices that you have in terms of maybe what morsels or bars to buy, whether it's private label, Nestle, Hershey, and GHIRARDELLI. And they felt like they had a better product, but the trick was how to make people believe it. And they believed that having people share their successes was a great way to create believers. So the first thing we did was look at past campaign behaviors. How did the campaign do the year before? And what we found was GHIRARDELLI had integrated a number of recipes into the Allrecipes experience, which is really great. It's an outstanding way to make your content discoverable, just because we do excel so strongly at SEO. This is a great way to get your recipes out to your target audience, and also to connect with them across devices, because that's something that Allrecipes does really well. And we found that social referrals for GHIRARDELLI recipes outperformed baking recipes in general. So we knew then and there that this was a brand that people could really get excited about, which validated the opportunity of placing recipes into the site. We also took a look at, well, if we're going to focus on recipes, you really can't talk about every recipe all the time. So which are those few recipes that are going to have the highest degree of relevance during this campaign period, which was October, November, December. And so this, we obviously leveraged the, actually, I guess you have, I don't know if you talked about this yet. This is a report created in Tableau, which allows our internal teams as well as our account managers and ad operations folks to take a look at how these integrated recipes are performing. So some of our brands have up to 1,000 recipes on the site, and they want to know which ones perform best. And views are important, how many people are looking at these recipes. But sometimes there's a different filter that people want to look at. What are the recipes that people are most likely to submit photos for? Or which ones are getting the highest ratings or the most ratings or reviews? And so this gives them a little bit of a different pass in terms of looking at these audience behaviors in line with their integrated content. We also knew, looking at the data, that GHIRARDELLI recipes outperform well, non-baking chocolate recipes. So right there, this was great validation that there was this brand trust, that people wanted to hear from Ghirardelli, and if they found a Ghirardelli recipe, odds are that they would be likely to prepare it. And of course, if you prepare it, you're likely purchasing chocolate. So that's a good thing. We also took a look at platform adoption for chocolate baking folks, and this is a look at the dessert hot sheet. And we can see that baking recipes disproportionately perform sort of well on the desktop. And in general, dessert recipes do less well on the mobile devices, which may mean that home cooks are likely, when they're baking, they're pulling from their pantry, right? You've got the sugar, the flour, these things on hand. And so how do you create a message that reaches them in store so we can make sure that they stock their pantry with Ghirardelli, right? And so we also saw that tablets do disproportionately well too, and I think that supports the notion that bakers are really visual, right? You want a product that's tempting and beautiful, sort of to align with great taste, and so the tablet was performing, over-indexing there. We also saw, for Ghirardelli in particular, we just talked about dessert recipes doing less well on phones. Well, Ghirardelli, it turns out, does disproportionately well on phones. So what does that mean? It could likely mean that Ghirardelli has strong popularity amongst millennials, because we find that millennials tend to be more likely to be mobile-only home cooks as compared to older cooks. So this was a really great opportunity for Ghirardelli to get in front of these millennial bakers. Who's most likely to share across social channels? Millennials, right? So if they're wanting to create this campaign based on buzz and let other people tell their stories, mobile could be an outstanding place to reach them. We also took a look at let's see what here. There we go. Okay, so this slide really validated that while we were excited about mobile, that there was multiple devices that this campaign needed to extend across, because we saw that a lot of recipes were being viewed on smartphones, which is great, but the most photos are viewed on a desktop, right? And we talked about dessert lovers being highly visual, and so if you have to sort of tempt them with their eyes, we needed to have a presence there. But we lastly saw that tablet users were 33% more likely to look at videos. And videos are an important way to get people to try new ways of using chocolate. And also we knew that millennials, again, are more likely to view how-to cooking videos. So this is a great way to engage with them. We also looked at what dessert recipes are trending, right? What are people looking at? And we look at this information from multiple different angles. So it's one thing to see what's most searched for, but we also want to know, to what Grace mentioned before, what's most printed? What are people taking into the store? What are folks most likely to look for on mobile devices? And also, what are the recipes that are most likely to be photographed? Because if you're looking, again, for people to share their stories through photos, you want to pick those types of recipes that people are most proud of, right? Things that they most want to brag about. We also wanted to see and validate, hey, is chocolate still a flavor that people get excited about? And really much to nobody's surprise, duh, yes, everybody loves chocolate. In fact, most of our chocolate recipe searches were experiencing double-digit growth, which was really great. And the BI team put on about 10 pounds when they created this report, just looking at chocolate all the time. The other thing we wanted to look at, remember we talked about looking at previous years' trends? Well, the previous year, mini desserts were all the rage, right? We saw that those cake pops came into Starbucks, and the mini scones, and the mini this, and the mini that. I think there was like little pie makers that you could buy at Williams-Sonoma, and so everybody got excited about that. And so the previous year, that was a great strategy. But when we looked to see what was happening now, it turned out that interest in mini desserts were waning on the web in general, but also on Allrecipes. So we steered clear of that. So takeaways and recommendations based on this analysis. One were that, people that love chocolate and love to bake love to share their story, and so we knew that a social campaign made sense. We also knew that Ghirardelli chocolate enthusiasts are really visual, so we want to create media that's big and bold and shares these amazing pictures of chocolate dripping out of this molten lava cake. So we wanted to make sure that was part of the campaign. And then we also knew that success begets more success, right? So those recipes that have the most ratings and reviews and photos get the most attention, right? We talked about that. I know people will not click on a recipe on Google unless they see a photo, but they also want to know that other people have made it before then. Folks don't want to be a guinea pig, and so we wanted to seed the conversation early, allow people to start sharing those reviews, and then we could sort of amplify that effect more easily. So here's the campaign that we created. It ran across multiple media, both print, digital, blogs, social. We worked in concert with Better Homes and Gardens, which is our sister company, and they created this really cool campaign that got a lot of excitement, a ton of engagement. And of course, we looked to see what the results were. We could see that the GHIRARDELLI recipes are in blue. And at the beginning of the campaign, they didn't perform as well as our internal content, right? Because that internal content's been around for 18 years, so it's got a lot of activity centered around it. But by December, it had really caught up, that folks had embraced the brand, embraced the content, and their recipe views increased over 300% during the campaign, which was a real success. We were proud of that, an important part of the strategy, and we could see that there was some definite results. But at the end of the day, what's most important is, did we sell more chocolate, right? Because that's what keeps GHIRARDELLI in business. And we're excited to share that GHIRARDELLI saw a 20% lift in baking chocolate during the course of the campaign. And this is working with, it's called the Meredith Sales Guarantee, and it's a partnership we have with Nielsen Catalina, where they take a look at scan data to see, hey, did more SKUs move through the grocery store aisle? And so we had some great results there. I'm going to pass it back to you, Grace.
Okay, so to wrap up, I wanted to make sure everybody left with something actionable. So if we have any food bloggers here, I'll share one secret for success. Anything with novelty cakes does extremely well. So Barbie doll cake on Allrecipes, oh my gosh, crazy page views. So if you do any kind of novelty cakes, I guarantee you will probably see some increased traffic to your site, and they go viral as well. But aside from that, just a few key takeaways for building a data-hungry culture. So we really started, so assuming that you've got a small team and you don't have a lot of people there to be digging into this data, but you're really passionate about it and you want to light a fire across your organization, starting small, whetting appetites. So like I said, answering someone else's question. Then you've got someone that's an advocate. If you help them do their job, they're going to help spread that knowledge around the organization. Elevating sticky data points, right? Like Barbie doll cake. That's a sticky data point. Do something like Barbie doll cake and we'll get the page views. The fact that mobile has overtaken desktop, that's a sticky data point. People remember that. Propagate and evangelize any opportunity you have to speak at your organization about some of these findings that you have. Do it. We speak at all staffs. We do brown bags. We do these kinds of things to try and get out and talk about the stuff that I'm super excited about. Show value and demand. So set up that repository so you can get everybody that's interested submitting their questions. Assign time. That's what we do. We say this thing will take us about 3 hours. Well, if I only have a team that has a capacity of 40 hours a week and I have 180 hours of requests in the queue, I can quantify the fact that I might need more headcount at some point. Have a prioritization plan, figure out how to keep those stakeholders satisfied and continuously communicate with them so that they feel like you're trying to service them and they understand why you don't. If you have all these other requests that you have to do ahead of theirs, make it very transparent. People tend to be very understanding about that because they're dealing with the same workload. Do what you can to deliver something now rather than in 2 weeks, right? So we did these hot sheets to try and get that out of the door right away. Getting more data. So there are pockets of data around an organization. When I went looking for where the data lived in my organization, I found a lot of places where it lived and they were all very disparate. Find out where it is, learn how to use it, max it out. We don't get the opportunity at Allrecipes to find a new data source, so I want to make sure that any data source we have maxed out the limitations and really understand that platform inside and out before we ask for additional platforms. Having that expertise helps you figure out what data you need. So you can quantify the fact that you know that this platform can't support it, but we need one that does. It's easier when you can speak to all of the platforms at a very expert level. And then champion for those improvements. Get involved with your product team and your dev team. Make them understand that maybe instrumenting this analytics is going to cause this sprint to take longer, or add additional hours to a particular sprint that they don't have, or increase story points, but really champion for that. And it's easy to do when you've surfaced and evangelized and shown how that data and the insights from that data can really help inform decisions. And then build a team. So identify who those power users are. They might be in your group, but likely they're in other groups, and make them part of that process. You may not be able to get an analytics engineer on your team, but you can find someone that really cares about this data or that you've proved value to, and get them to work with the product team as well. So try and recruit people outside of your team to help you with your job. And then a balanced focus. So like I said, that advertiser insight discipline and the audience insight, we really need to create these good user experiences. Otherwise, we don't get that traffic. All of that organic growth that we've worked on building over the last 16 years is going to be meaningless if we don't continue to provide good user experiences. And then really develop a discipline. So be rigorous about your process, and be the example for building out a rigorous process across your org.
All right,
Thank you.
I have a couple things to add. So one of which is, if we can definitely take questions now, but Grace and then Rennie and Avi are here. Raise your hands if you have questions for them throughout the conference. Track them down. I think I thought I saw Julie Mumford earlier, but I think we talked about chocolate and she left early. So if you find her, she actually did all the GHIRARDELLI work. So I get to tell our story from what the analytics folks do, but we have some of the best in the business, and so definitely track them down. Two, we're always looking for great talent. So if this is the type of information and approach to data that you think is interesting, and you'd like to, work here in Seattle or already here, then contact Grace.
Yes.
And also, we're just on the street. So if you're sort of curious what our offices look like, we have a lot of big screen TVs with data sort of scrolling through all the time. Track us down. We'd be happy to take you on a tour.
Great. And take the session survey. Thank you.